Hey everybody, welcome back to We Are Podcast Network. This is We Are Bagu, Season 1, Episode 17, Indie Developer Spotlight, Talif's Journey, with game developers Zach and Tera. Me and Ethan had the pleasure sitting down with Zach and Tera and talking about Talif's Journey, a JRPG that should be releasing next year. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, thank you so much. Please go to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, or iTunes, and give We Are Podcast a like. And if you get a chance, head over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. We're at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at /WeArePodcast. With that said, on to the podcast.
We Are Bagu.
Hey everybody, welcome to We Are Bagu, a video game podcast where we talk Atari to Steam and everything in between. This is Duck, and I am here with...
Dr. E.
Dr. Ethan Eastwood, baby. And today we have a very special podcast with two very special guests. They are the developers of Talif's Journey, an indie game that should be coming out soon. We have Zach Gibbons and Tera with us. So, Zach and Tera, how are you doing today?
We're doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing excellent, excellent. Mr. Zach, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. You know, making it.
No doubt. In this
Living,
time of
breathing,
COVID,
all that good stuff.
Bro, as long as you're breathing right now, that's all that matters because,
No joke.
Yeah.
We are doing this, of course, through Zoom meeting because we're in the time of COVID, but let's get to it. We haven't played it, but this is how we met. We met, I believe Zach was at Retropalooza. Tera, were you at Retropalooza also?
I sure was.
And we went up to the Koist, or the whatever they call it. I always say it wrong. Koist, what is it? Koist?
You mean, I'm pretty sure it's Booth?
Booth? All right, we went up to the booth.
Or
and
I was like, I got no idea.
Yeah.
And we were immediately handed one of these, which I'm holding up right now, is an amazing looking card that is the business card for the team here. You see 4 elemental orbs on it, and it is awesome. This is literally the best thing I got at Retropalooza that day. This card totally sold me, and I believe it sold you too, Ethan. Is that correct?
oh, dude, that was just the coolest thing. There was a couple other indie developers there and whatnot, but man, the little card, I just love the little handouts and shit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was very impressive, very professional. I loved it.
Yes, and we went up to the booth, and I think we got to play the game for a couple minutes before we had to bounce. But Ethan definitely was 100% in, and I kind of was just watching what he was doing. What was y'all's experience like at Retropalooza?
Retropalooza was tiring. It was really busy for us, you know, with people coming and going so much. So we didn't get to see much of the actual Retropalooza. We were taking, like, turns going to, like, go look at stuff. But for the most part, it was actually really encouraging seeing the response that we got, I think, for Talif there. There were a lot of people who played it, and like everyone had kind words about it. And I'm really glad you liked the card, by the way. That was all Tera, 100%.
Oh,
Boom.
we're
Boom.
not worthy.
And y'all were on the back of this, too. I can see that right now. So, boom, there you are. So where does that come from? Where do your little avatars of what looks like a grasshopper and a raccoon, where does that stem from?
A grasshopper, that's really great.
I don't know. Is that what it is? What is it?
So I'm a ridiculously huge sci-fi fan, and I love robots and androids and cyborgs, and like my major influence in like art and stuff comes from like Ghost in the Shell and Blade Runner, and which is really surreal because I'm working on a fantasy game, right? Like it's just the total opposite. Yeah.
So what is it? Is it a grasshopper? Is it a bunny? What is that? What am I looking at right now?
It's just a little robot dude. So I want to say if you've seen Ghost in the Shell, he does another piece of work that's called Appleseed, and the character in that has these long antennae, and that's just kind of what they were inspired by.
And how
Right
about you
on.
for the raccoon, Zach?
I get often referred to by my friends as a raccoon person.
What does that mean? Are you out like in the trash can and stuff? What are you doing?
No.
A little bit. Kind of.
He hesitated. He definitely is. He hesitated.
Just a tiny bit.
But, so, on top of that, so, besides my hesitation, Tera and I have decided that we're going to have a hidden developer room if you do some particular stuff. And we were like, what should our avatars be, like, in this? Because we don't want to, like, put actual people in it. She's like, well, I'm going to be a robot. And I was like, well, cool. obviously. Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, people call me a raccoon person all the time. I'll probably just make it this fat raccoon sitting on a heap, like, just, like, making a game and being like, oh, yeah, geez, you guys are in here. So we took that and we were like, let's put that on the card.
Yeah.
And it sells it. Like I said, this card is the best thing I got from Retropalooza, and I got some cool shit there. But like, this is stuck in my drawer next to me, and I kept thinking, like, I gotta get a hold of them. I gotta talk to them. I want to have this conversation. So
it's really memorable too. It makes y'all stand out from a lot of the other developers that were there.
Amazing.
So,
and the artwork is just just unbelievable. I want to point out, I said it wrong. It's not Talif's Journey, then it's Talif's Journey. Is that right?
It is. It's Talif.
Okay, Talif. Say it right, Talif. Okay, I got it.
For what it's worth, I'm always really endeared by the different pronunciations I've heard of Talif, because like that's such an RPG thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you talk to like three people, like you talk about Final Fantasy VI, someone's like Cyan or Cyan or Cyan or Magus and Magus and Magus, and I actually love that kind of thing for what it's worth.
Oh yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy VII, I'm still not sure. Is it Mako Reactor? What is it? I have no idea.
Oh god, I don't know. That one's a good test. I actually am
life.
not sure the real one for that one.
We have the debate for Zebes or Zebes all the time for Metroid. We don't know. We really don't know. So Metroid. So let's get into it. Let's get into how you got into video games. Now, first of all, are y'all in the DFW area? I know Zach is. Carrollton. Go to his Twitter. We will link everything below us here. Especially, you need to go to the Twitter because that's where all the good shit is. If you look up Talif's Journey anywhere else, you get good stuff, but the Twitter gets the best of it. I've noticed that. You're in DFW, Zach, right?
I am located smack dab in the middle of Carrollton.
All right. And Tara, you were in DFW or somewhere else?
I live in Louisville.
Right on. So DFW represent up in here?
Pretty dang close.
Yes. So y'all, how did y'all meet?
High school. We've been friends.
We went to high school together.
What was the first thing you talked about? Was it video games? Did you know it was going to be a relationship that turned into game development, or was it just a friendship that was built just on like, hey, how you doing? How you doing?
It definitely started over being like both into manga and comics and video games and being kind of nerdy. But I do have a kind of funny anecdote. I have a distinct memory of sitting in a GameStop in high school, and he's sitting there telling me the entire mechanics to Talif's Journey over 10 years ago.
Really?
And he's like, and I want this, and I want this, and this, and this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's a cool concept. Neat. And then we, like, never spoke of it again. And then he took it, and he put it to his chest, and he carried it.
Wow. For how long before you brought it up again?
Wow.
Like, were you embarrassed by that? It's also one of those things where, like, you tell somebody, like, I have a dream and I'd really like to do this. And it's like, okay. And then you're just like, they didn't get it, so I'm not going to talk about it. Or was it the inverse? It stuck with you. How long was it between that and then you actually being like, hey, I need help with this?
Okay, boy, that's a lot. I can't believe that you remember that. Actually,
that's awesome, though.
She hasn't told me about this memory in a while, I think. So I'm just as surprised as you guys.
Oh, content. Yes, that's what I love.
So it's true that was a plan, because I was really disillusioned with RPGs back then. And I was like, man, you know who's cool? Magus and like all these wizards, but I really want Magic to be complicated and hard, and I really don't want it to be something that's just handed to you and like you level and like you have your magic now. I was like, I hate that, and I want more out of my wizards.
Let's start there. So you're a fan of Final Fantasy VI. That is your favorite Final Fantasy game, is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and then there looks like there's influences of Earthbound in this, and anything else that you could really say? What were the games that influenced you? Or JRPGs, is that where it's at? That's your favorite type of game?
So I love older JRPGs. I don't feel like they aged as a genre super well, personally. But that said, the real major influences for Talif, I'd say, are Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, and Mario RPG. And those are just like the big three. Earthbound doesn't really come into play as much, but I loved Earthbound. Like, I played a lot of Earthbound. Like, in fact, Tara and I played Earthbound together.
Boy, did we.
And that's actually how we used to actually play a good amount of RPGs together, even, now that I think about it.
We went through Chrono Trigger, we went through 6, we went through all of Earthbound, except for 3. We never got around to 3.
So y'all got to share those experiences, those stories together, and kind of...
Yeah.
That's badass.
Yeah. So you kind of knew early that you were going to be working on this game thing. So if you were 10 years ago talking in GameStop about that, you must have had it in the back of your head even before that. So where did the idea pop into your mind for this whole thing?
So this all kind of started like back in GameStop. It was just kind of an idea. And I was like, I would love to make a game.
Real quick, Tara, you were visiting GameStop or you worked there too?
So we weren't working there. We used to be really bad mall rats, because we grew up in a kind of like really small town in Texas where like the only thing to do was go to the mall. That was it. That was your option. So every Saturday we'd be down there walking the mall, playing at the arcade, and that would be it. And then we'd go play video games to home because those were your options.
So it started there. This is going to be a real like up and down little roller coaster. So I wanted to make that RPG, and I remember even back then I was trying to like do character sprites by like, Tara, do you remember when I used to copy Final Fantasy VI character sprites and try to lay the characters over them?
I do.
Yeah, I went through a phase where I was just like making characters, and then I found out video games are really hard to make, and I was a teenager, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do this.
I distinctly remember some painful hours with the original Game Maker, like the OG.
Oh my god. Yeah, I used like Game Maker 7 back then. Maybe Game Maker like 5 or 6, and I was like, this is crazy. I'm way too dumb to understand how this works.
I think I read that like how-to tutorial, and I was like, I didn't want to turn this thing on. It's way too complicated.
Game Maker was a mess.
Oh, it was a hot mess, dude. Especially 7. I mean, that was what, back in 2006? I'm going to say it's 2007. Does that sound about right?
And built off an engine from like 95?
Yeah, it was
so
rough.
Like, on top of all of that, we didn't have like resources in that area. Like that was when YouTube was just like starting to be a thing. So
yeah, you were watching like 280p. 10 parts, right?
Some guy that was holding a camcorder up to his monitor going,
yeah,
this is how you do
exactly.
this.
Like, that's what we were dealing with back then. It was like, you want to learn a tutorial? Well, here's 58 10-minute parts of like your one tutorial.
Ooh.
But was it a passion already, or the game hadn't even taken form in your head yet? You were just playing around with the Game Maker 7 at that time.
So I also used to write a bunch of stories. Like I used to just like write tons and tons of stories. And in fact, like Talif, not exactly as he is today, but he was a character even back then. Like I used to draw him. And there are a couple others that make an appearance that I used to draw too. In fact, a lot of them that make an appearance. You'll meet a character in the Wizard Tower named Silka. She's one of the old originals of mine and Tara's that we actually shared 100 years ago.
And was this characters that you were just writing for stories, or you playing D&D? What was going on?
I was just writing them for stories.
Just writing them for stories.
So I say write them for stories, but they were kind of adjacent. Like I played a bunch of EverQuest when I was a teenager. So like I actually had a magician named Talisman. And like now Talif has a talisman. Everything kind of links together back to all the times I played MMOs. I'd write stories for those characters.
The story itself, though, how did that form? You kind of were creating it all this time before you brought it out and said to Tara, like, listen, I have this idea. So was she the first person you brought it to, or who was the first person?
Oh, man. So the story of how Tara started helping me is really funny, and I really want to get to that in line because I really feel like you need some context of how this whole thing built up before Tara was like, no more of this.
Okay, good.
Build it up.
It was less me asking her for help and more her being like, this is the worst tree I've ever seen, and I want to help you. And she basically was like, if you ask me for help, I'll say yes. And I was like, oh, okay, well, will you help me? She's like, yes.
It's that easy sometimes. I'm telling you, the reason things don't happen in this world is because we don't ask. We're always too afraid to ask. Sometimes you just ask, like we're having a podcast right now, because all I did was ask. And it's that simple. But before that, though, you were trying to do everything by yourself, is what you're saying.
I was, and I've grown a lot as an artist since I've started Talif like almost 2 years ago, and I've done a lot better. And if you go back to the very beginning, you see the art, you're like, it's okay. But now it's starting to look like really good with like my character sprites and how they've improved, but they've mostly improved because Tara will look at them and give me the right critiques because, let's be honest, as far as art master goes on this project, it's definitely her.
Right. Well, let's switch gears real quick. Tara, how did you get into doing art? Like, your work is amazing. All the promotional work looks amazing. The game itself looks amazing. Your avatar on screen right now looks amazing. How did you get into this? Have you always had that skill since your childhood, or did you build this as you got older, or what happened?
I have a really surprising memory that I tell people. I actually remember the first thing I ever drew distinctly was a clown in kindergarten that we had like the teacher walk us through a step-by-step to draw. And I don't know, that was like synapses connected in my brain, and I was like, oh man, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. And then I just proceeded to keep drawing since kindergarten. And like my parents have like these horrible sketchbooks that go back to like first grade. And I just like, I'm like, no, just keep them in the closet and don't look at them. But yeah, it's just been like I've got probably tens of thousands of hours logged into practice, and that's why I've gotten so good.
Yeah.
But I am a comic book addict. That's my thing. It doesn't matter if they're from Japan or from Korea or from France or from America, or like, it doesn't matter who drew them. When Zach comes over to my house, I have like 7 bookshelves of nothing but comic books.
Wow.
Whoa.
So like, that's where I'm actually not that much of like a video game, which is ironic because I am a programmer, but like.
So you do programming too?
Comics are my hobby. Yeah, I do programming, but it's my day job. It's not my like passion.
I see. But the drawing itself is the passion. And so the art of, like you said, who would you say is your favorite comic artist in America?
Oh man. In America, it's definitely Sean Murphy Gordon.
And what's he working
I
on?
always switch. So he's a comic artist right now. He's doing a series for Batman, and there's a kind of interesting story about him. So his style is not what you would consider by like DC and Marvel, which is called a house style, which is where it looks like super realistic and like everything's like very how you picture Batman. He has a very different style, and DC basically told him like, get lost. You can't do it. He drew like a whole issue of a comic for them, and they never published it because they're like, it's not what we want. But then he proceeded to go get popular elsewhere, so much so that they're like, here's a Batman run because you're so popular. Like they gave him their title. So he's a huge inspiration for me.
You just said it right there. Is what you all are doing right now. You got to build your own success. You got to go and bring the passion to it. Do you think your work looks like anyone else's work? Because from what little bit I've seen, it doesn't. It has its own unique flair.
I find that one of the things that I like to say a lot, and you'll see a lot of other artists say, is your style really comes from basically stealing the things you like from a bunch of other styles. So like my style comes from the fact that I like the way this guy does this kind of line art, but I like the way that girl does this particular thing. And that's the same for kind of all artists, is you aren't really trying to copy any one person. You're just trying to go, these are the things I like in art, period. So I want to take those things that I see and like and kind of internalize them into my own style. So that's kind of where I went with it.
And let's talk about how that affects the game, too, because like you said, this is a fantasy game. Zach, you were saying earlier that you wanted to play a game where the mage was difficult. Instead of it just being like, okay, here's the mage, they level up, here's the power. You want to change that up. So what is the main thing you want to do with Talif's Journey?
There's a couple of things that I want to do. One, I want to push a theme in Talif's Journey that your wizard isn't just someone who does a bunch of damage, but there's someone who thinks and is thoughtful, which is why one of the mechanics in Talif, which I just posted a tweet today, is called Consider. And Talif stops and he looks at the monster and he has like a thought about it, and you can see his like weaknesses and strengths, and like he gets some magic points back because it's kind of like he's like calmed down, he's like looking at the situation. Another thing I want to do is I want it to come across that magic is difficult and oftentimes it's dangerous even. Ooh. So it's not like an easy thing that anyone can just pick up and do in this world. So that's another thing. I want to explore a story element that magic is actually fairly new. So this isn't like this ancient old thing. Magic is going to be like, it's kind of a thing everyone's still figuring out. I really want to focus on the life and times of magic and being a wizard in this world of magic. And I really want to explore... I'm not going to say that.
All right. It's fine. You're allowed to keep secrets. You have every right to. This is your game, and when we play it, it'll be awesome. What we can say?
Let me ask you this. From some of the trailers and videos and stuff that I've seen, could you go into a little bit more about how the combat works? I know it focuses around a lot on those orbs or the different elements, and you kind of combine those and make spells. Is that right?
That's true. That's right. Talif starts with what I refer to as Orb Slots. So he's able to, when the game begins, start with 3 orbs, and he's going to be able to gain his 4th orbs. Most combinations of orbs actually work in Talif's Journey, and I try to make it a pattern. Talif doesn't have a basic attack or a melee attack or anything because I don't feel wizards should do that because they're wizards. So his single orb spells are weak, no magic point cost spells. His 2 orb spells are support spells, so he can put a barrier on himself, or he can like change how the crit rate works in the battlefield. or he can put a different kind of like damage reflecting barrier on himself, or he can resist status ailments, or he can make a mixture where he resists status ailments and absorbs damage based on like what elements you mix together. As long as it's 2 orbs, it's going to be a support spell. The 3 orb spells are going to be your damage spells in Talif. They're your pure elements. 3 earth is earth pillar, 3 fire is fireball. But then you can start mixing things together like that too. So you could do 2 earth and 1 water and you cast poison mud, and that has a poison status ailment attached. Or you can cast 1 earth, 1 wind, 1 water, and you'll cast erosion, which will lower their defense. So there's all of these like crazy combinations, and they're all available from the moment you start. And you'll notice that as you start casting spells, if you just start kind of experimenting, you'll start seeing spell discovered. Talif has a spell book that shows you all of the data on each spell you discover, but it also shows you how many spells you're missing and you haven't discovered yet.
Oh, so you're exploring and kind of figuring out the magic along with Talif.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
You and Talif are both learning magic together.
That is very cool.
That's awesome.
Now, is there consequences to that too? So you're saying you only have magic to use against enemies. If you use the wrong spell against an enemy, do they have, power over you at that point, or does it not work, or how's that going?
So Talif isn't really fighting wizards, save for one boss encounter versus everyone's favorite character in the middle of the game. But Talif's not really fighting wizards so much. So your consequence is that you've lost a turn, and Talif's only 1 kid. So like if you cast a spell and they're immune or they absorb it, then like you're gonna get slapped for it.
Right.
And they're not gonna take any like control or anything of him like that in that sense. But you do start losing like your cadence in the fight.
Oh, another thing is, don't forget, you can't back out of a spell.
Yes. If you start casting a spell, once you put that first orb in, that spell's locked in and it's going. So you have to continue casting because Talif has to direct the magic somewhere.
So when you commit to an orb, you need to commit to that orb.
Right. You're committing to that orb or that spell. I've since considered. I actually use the word consider a lot in real life. Funny how it got here, but yeah, so I am going to make it to where a person can just cancel the spell, but they lose their turn. They fizzle the spell out. They can do something with it. Because I discovered through some testing, it's not very fun. Whenever I miscast spells and I'm testing, I'm like, I don't have the magic points for this.
Yeah.
I want to just cancel it. And I was like, yeah, I should probably do that then. If I feel that and I'm doing it, then I should probably just make that a thing. But yeah, so once you go in, that turn's committed to casting a spell. So as long as you don't cast an orb, you can leave and back out. So there's a consequence of magic in that. Also, since Talif has no spells to discover, there's still a leveling system. He still can gain skills to improve his magic casting or improve his consider rate, how his consider works, or improve how he deals with encounters. One thing being his ultimate ability is called Overcast, which means you can continue putting in orbs after you cast the spell, and Talif will continue channeling magic, like just raw power, to power it up. But it comes at the cost of 30% of his life for every single orb after that. But it increases the damage by like 20%. So you want big numbers in a wizard game, you come to the right place.
Damn. So this is about stats in a big way, too, that really play into the battles. And the battle system is built in a way that you don't know what's going to happen unless you go in, and it's all a process of learning. So is a lot of this game comes down to the battle system. Is that what it is? Or what I saw, it looks like there's a lot of story, too. Is that correct?
There is a lot of story. There is a lot of story in this game, and I keep adding more story in little...
Boy, does he.
So, what's the deal with that? I see Grandpa in the trailers. I see Talif running around in a wooded area. Like, is this the beginning of the game that we're seeing right now? Or, what gets us into this journey? Is magic handed down? Is this Grandpa character? Is he senile? Is he sage-like? What's going on?
He might be senile, but I feel like that's up for everyone else to decide. The story of Talif is he wakes up and it's finally his turn to go out on his adventure. He's an apprentice. He's not an actual wizard yet. He's been studying for a while, and he's currently the only person in the tower now that isn't a full wizard. He's overslept because, of course he has. He's every one of us.
Exactly.
He's overslept. Grandpa goes and wakes him up, kind of like rushes him out. And what is about to be given to him is for his trial. They live on this island, and there are 4 dungeons. Each dungeon is elemental themed. So going to be given this green keystone. And what the keystone does is it opens the boss room at the bottom of the dungeons. But Grandpa's like, hey, go around and talk to everybody real quick and get your cape and like get your items and go remember how to cast spells and come back to me when you're done. and I'll give you the keystone. You can start. So, you go around, you talk, and after you talk to the first character, Silka, the tailor, who gives you your cape and everything, you go out to the middle. Grandpa's not inside the tower right now. So then you go and get your items and go do the tutorial, and you come back, and he runs in. He's like, the keystone's been stolen. And Talif's like, I was in that room for 5 minutes. What happened? Like, I went outside and some goblins stole it. It was super impressive, and it's gone. And, the tutorial character's name is Kazakh. He's kind of moody. I think moody genius is probably how he's a little described. So he comes out and he's like, really? You want us to all believe that you walked outside and got stolen? You're the archmage and goblins stole it from you? And he's like, yeah, that's what I want you to believe. He's like, all right, whatever.
Okay, that's what it is.
And Talif's like, cool, this is part of the trial. I get it. I'm on it. And Grandpa's like, actually, he's like, not another word. I'm going. And he runs outside.
He's senile. Yes, I like it.
Then you go down to this bridge. You go through the forest, which is your first area. It's kind of like the area that teaches you about the things. There are some secret areas in there. Everyone explore it. He's like, two goblins stole the keystone. It was 2 goblins. He is sure and certain it is 2 goblins, and you go down to the bridge, and it's like a goblin and a gigantic cyclops.
I saw the picture of that. That looks amazing, by the way. That's on the Twitter, right? That picture, that blew me away. I was like, wow, that's huge. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the art style in this is absolutely out of control. It was amazing.
You beat the 2 goblins, and you get the keystone back, you go back, and he's like, okay, the trial's over. Or, like, that's one of the trials, right? And he's like, no, absolutely not. Are you insane? The trial is just now starting. And Talif's like, I hate you, but I'm going to do it. And then the island opens up, and you can pick whatever dungeon you want, whatever order. Besides the Sky Temple is going to have these tornadoes, and you can't go in, so you have your choice of the first 3 dungeons: fire, earth, and water. Then you go down to each one. There's going to be 2 stories going on. There's Talif's story of going down to the bottom to get the gift to bring back to Grandpa to show that he's a wizard now from all 4 places. And there's going to be a dungeon story, which is what are the going-ons within each of these dungeons.
And how long is the gameplay right now? That look on your face says it's a long game, or you're not a long game?
I don't want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, he started it as like, it's not going to be a long game. It's not. And then like playtesting the forest, it's like, oh, some people take almost an hour to get through the forest. And the dungeons are much longer than that.
5 times.
Leave no stone unturned.
And how far along are you in that process? Percentage-wise, where do you think you're at?
40?
40?
It's hard to answer that question because I have to split it into 2 things, right? So, like, content-wise, art-wise, and all that stuff, I'd say, Tera, 40? A solid 40% art-wise, because we still need to do the art for all the monsters in the next 3 dungeons.
Yeah, I would say we're like at 40% of art done. Definitely.
Yeah. But system-wise, I feel like we're moving around like 75 or 80 because I've been redoing battle and everything, and once battle is completely redone, the cutscenes all work and the battle flow all works.
Zach comes at me. He's like, hey, I want the battle screen to be front on. I want you to see the back of Talif and the monsters right in front of him. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a pixel-perfect game, so that means that I have a UI space to work with that is 320 pixels wide by 180 pixels tall. Keep in mind, for context, that like the average avatar that you post on social media is 100 pixels by 100 pixels.
Right.
So
it's like a Game Boy Advance screen. That's what you're saying. It's like really tiny pixel wise.
Super tiny pixel wise.
Are you still working in that small screen? Because the game doesn't look like it. Really?
Yes.
Wow, because you've gotten so much into that small area. That's absolutely insane.
We've gotten
it is a jigsaw puzzle.
We've also like really improved since we first started.
I feel like this is an intervention at this point. Zach, you got to stop doing this to her.
Hey everyone, it's just Doc jumping in here real quick to say thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you're enjoying it, please head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, and give We Are Podcast a like. And if you get a chance, head over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at /We Are Podcast. And if you're enjoying the podcast today, please share with your friends. It's the only way we can grow this network. With that said, back to the podcast.
But no, it's impressive. It's very impressive what you've been able to do.
Really
and did you change the perspective now too? I saw the battle system looks different now.
Yeah, the perspective is more of angled isometric perspective.
Right.
Tera, would you describe it that way?
It's complete voodoo Houdini magic, because really, both sprites are still facing head on. I've just angled them in such a way that it creates an illusion that it's at an isometric
Magic.
view. But the amount of screen space we've gotten back from it is just astronomical. The room for UI is insane now.
So you have to redo everything, though, that you started with, correct? All the Talif with his back and the monsters up front facing forward. Now it's going to be isometric, or are you keeping all the sprite work you did already and just putting it on this new plane?
I am not just keeping the sprite work. They are way too big, actually. And I knew we were heading here eventually anyway. So I was like, we need to just shrink it. We need to just shrink the battle. I'll shrink all the monster sprites and I'll redo all the animations and everything, and it's fine. I don't mind doing it, especially because they're actually turning out way better this time around than they did first time around. So I'm actually really encouraged. I'm like, I should redo them anyways.
We were talking about kind of the storyline of the game and things that are going to happen. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the things you brought up. The consider mechanic. What again does that do?
So consider lets Talif kind of inspect a monster. When you look at a monster, a lot of times he'll say like a little blurb, which is like, this goblin's got a broken sword, I don't know how he broke it, or something like that. There's going to be a good number of times where Consider is going to give you actual game advice, which is like, I can't do damage to this, so I shouldn't even bother. Or, you know, it seems like after I cast spells in order, each element in order, like the monster opens up. It's also kind of relegated to a game advice position for players who want to know more about the monsters, whether it's lore or like how to fight it. But it's just like a quick little panel now that shows you like what its elemental weaknesses and strengths are, what its hit points are, what its hit points remaining are, what its monster name is, like a little picture of it and Talif's thoughts.
And you mentioned the spell book too, which we were super intrigued by, and the fact that as soon as you find out a spell, then it goes into the book. How many spells are we looking at here?
40. There's some statistical number that definitely it is. It's definitely over 40. But I'm trying to do every combination of 3 orbs right now to kind of give you a feel. Because when Talif gets his 4th orb, every spell isn't going to work. Mostly because I have made the decision, mostly for designing spells, that if you do 2 and 2, like a perfect split of spells, it's not going to become a spell. It just kind of fizzles out. And that's because Talif's Journey is a prologue to an actual series. I have a sequel completely planned out already. I'm basically building the engine for the sequel and making a game while I'm doing it, and then I'm going to, make the other game.
Nerds are the best. We're always world creating. Like every single nerd I know, just like, I have a story I'd like to tell. But that's what's beautiful about this is you found the medium in which you wanted to tell the story. Like you said, you were writing these things down already, and you're like, well, I think it's a video game, and I think it's this very specific kind of video game. When you have the urge to tell a story, you have to find a way to get it out there in the world, and that's what's wonderful.
I'm just curious, how many games have you already pre-planned ahead here?
Talif's Journey is 3 games. Talif's Journey is going to be a trilogy. Talif's Journey.
And then you go into Talif's Adventure, Talif's Quest, and those are each in 3 parts. And
we cannot call it Talif's Quest anymore. No, it actually was called Talif's Quest before Talif's Journey.
Okay, so it changed over. What happened?
Okay.
Was there a copyright or something?
No, there wasn't a copyright. There was a wave of indie games that had someone's quest in the title. It appeared, and I was like, I can't just be one of these games.
Yeah.
And then one of my friends actually sent me this post that was like, a quest is doing something, a journey is about like going somewhere. It's like the difference between a quest and a journey. It actually resonated, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really nice. I was like, it should be a journey. It is Talif's Journey through 3 games, and you get to go all the way with him. I have thought of other games. Actually, this kind of plays back into the question of how I got here. Because originally, when I started really trying to get into programming, I was making a game about a kid who was a wizard named Leo. Leo was going to mix orbs. It was going to be a 2D platformer on Xbox 360 arcade.
God, I remember that.
Yeah.
Tara has been here the whole time through all of it. Like,
she has.
And I love the fact that you say something, she's like, oh God, because she knows she has to put in the extra work.
It's called Leo's Journey. It was a 2D platformer, and I made a bunch of characters for it, and I was like, I am not good enough to make this game. I need to set my sights smaller. And then I proceeded to not make games for like 8 years. I never saw Leo's Journey happen, but it was always still there. And I say Leo's Journey, like that's what I'm going to call it. So then I was like, I'm going to make a Final Fantasy 1 type RPG where you make your party and you make it out of these classes. And I invented these classes, and Tara probably remembers this too.
I sure do.
There was like 7 different classes, and you make your character and you go into this world, and there are these like factions, and there is a wizard, and there is this girl who was super roguish girl who just wanted to get stuff, and there is this dude who did mind control magic, and they were all vying for power, and you were this D&D party stuck in this like conflict. And I started that, and it got out of my hands because I wasn't super great at programming then yet either, and I just stopped making it. And I was like, what if I made a game about one of the characters in this world, but like what has happened up to this point instead? And I was like, I'm going to make like a prologue. It'll be like a prologue to this game. So then I made Talif. And Talif is now this wizard kid in this world, like in this wizard tower on this island. And you can clearly see that there's a lot more world over there happening, like when you go to the edge of the island. And then I was like, okay, so I have Talif, and now I have the introduction, like this kind of character's introduction. And I was like, but what if I just made the second game about him instead and didn't do the party thing? So then I kind of worked backwards, and now I'm working all the way back forwards.
Nice.
And everything's just kind of changed a lot. And I do actually plan to eventually get around to my boy Leo one day, like after Talif's Journey's full story is told. I'll finally get there.
I've got to ask, Tera, is his endless enthusiasm for this, is that what really caught on for you? Because, like, I'm enthusiastic about what you're talking about right now. Like, I want it to happen. Is that what drew you in?
Yeah, there's a pretty funny story of, like, watching him go through these iterations. And I remember kind of telling him to start smaller. I was like, hey, what if you made a smaller game, like a prologue or something, like something simple, has like one dungeon. You get it out and you're good. And then, yeah, he's shaking his head because I quickly realized that was a folly. Because that's impossible.
What's great, though, is it sounds like he's the director, you're the producer on this, and it sounds like you guys have a perfect chemistry to do this, because that's what you need. You need somebody who's so far up here in the clouds, and then somebody who's a realist who can bring it down, and you meet in the middle. There
have been a few realist moments, for sure.
That's the magic coupling, because that's what you need. You need somebody who's like, no, we're going to go, and you got to be like, well, we can't go that quick. Come on. Come back.
He's way up there. He's a little raccoon balloon, and I'm just down here with like the rope around his waist.
But in a good way, because that's what I said. You need people to bring you back to reality, but you got to shoot for the stars. You got to dream so big. Sorry, Zach, what were you going to say before I cut you off? I got so excited there.
Oh, man, I don't even remember. It's gone. We'll get around to it.
It's fine. I was going to ask next, random encounters. I read your blog. And by the way, if you get a chance, check out the blog and read them, because you have a lot of opinions on games, and that's why I knew this conversation would be great. Yeah. I hated random encounters. I despise all that shit. But as I played Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, I started to love it. It looks like you might have had the same thing happen to you where you're like, I hate it, but now I kind of dig it. Is that correct?
No, I still hate random encounters.
Oh, okay, my bad. Well, my bad.
But you know, the reason the random encounters are such a
We've actually had a lot of deep talks about random encounters. Like, are we going to put enemies on the map? Are we going to do random step encounters? Are we going to do it so that they're like scripted, like Chrono Trigger? Like, we've actually had a lot of talking about how do we want to tackle random encounters? And I think what we came up with a good solution.
We had the talk again like a month ago on if we were still going to do random encounters.
And then I was like, well, if you want to make all of these map enemies, or you can make a blob.
And I do want to make all those map. So, okay, but that's neither here nor there. Point well taken. The thing I was going to say about random encounters is random encounters are only good when they're on the player's terms. And that is a hill I'll die on. So I think you really start facing in a random encounter game, like encounter fatigue. You're just like walking through a dungeon and you're like, I have had the 25th encounter. I'm tired of encounters now. I've seen everything. I don't need to keep fighting these. I don't need to keep grinding. I have everything I need out of this dungeon. Leave me alone. Right. I really believe that like you can mitigate encounter fatigue. That's why after you have done 20 encounters in Talif's Journey, Talif will unlock an ability called Field Study, and you can completely control the encounter rate. And you can do whatever you want. It's not up to me to decide if you want to go fight monsters or not, but all of the encounters from that point on are going to be on your terms. I just want you to have done enough to where you're like, I know how to fight things, you know?
So will you be able to, that's why you're going to create enemy sprites so you can see the enemies at that point?
I would love to have enemies on the field that would chase you, and then you can like dodge them and juke them, but Talif's movement is in 4 directions. So the enemies moving like in a diagonal would feel weird, and then the enemies enemies also chasing you in 4 directions. Like, I'd have to either make them faster than Talif to catch up or slower than Talif, and then they're meaningless. Right. And then if they don't matter, why not just let you be like, I want to turn on double random encounters. I want to do all of my grinding. So that's why I've put some incentives in the game for you to do encounters. So as you consider monsters, they're going to go into a bestiary, and Grandpa's going to give you rewards for filling out your bestiary. So Talif's items, you don't just go buy items out of a shop. Lissy is one of the merchants there. She's one of the wizards there, but she'll give you item packs. She's like, I'll give you'll get like 10 potions, 5 status heals, 1 MP restore, and then through gold, you can go with Lissy and visit Articono and upgrade your quantities, your qualities, and then you can like carry 30, 50 potions or whatever, and like a bunch of status heals, that's what you want, or like, and then your potions heal for more, so they go farther. Because I also feel like when I play JRPGs, I stopped going to shops. Like halfway through the game, I don't even go to shops anymore. I like buy 99 of everything, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm done.
You're done. 100%. I've always done the same thing too. And it's usually stick to the same thing too. Once you get into a pattern, you're just like, I just need these.
Find the one thing that works, and you're good.
Yeah, 20 tents, and I'm good. Let's get out of here.
So in this way, you get to feel like you're actually affecting and upgrading like what kinds of items you're getting. So you could be like, I need more healing. I want to focus on potions and upgrade to royal potions and upgrade your potion quantity and max all of that out. And now you have all the potions, and then Listen will just give them to you when you go visit her and restock you. So you're not spending gold on that. All of your gold is kind of focused on like upgrades. You're going to want to grind because there's a lot of upgrades in Talif. Same for his gear. There's roughly 7 sets of gear in the game, I think, but each piece can be upgraded and what I call ascended. So Talif's gear actually lets you do things like you can have stronger earth barriers, or you can have gloves that increase your fire damage. You can have a cape that increases your earth barrier defense, and you can kind of like start customizing how your wizard plays. You can be a fire wizard and wear all the fire gear, or you can be like a mixed wizard and like mix all the elements together.
I know it would be a lot of sprite work, but does that change how Talif looks as well?
Yes.
I think it has to, right? Because I'm like, Tera, is that where we're going with that?
Luckily, I don't do the sprite work.
Okay, so who's doing sprite work?
I do he does all of the sprites in the game. He'll bring them to me, and I'll help him, I'll be like, okay, your arms are a little short here, try this pose maybe. But my major work on the game is I do all of the UI, and I do all of the world.
So you're going backgrounds and UI is what you're doing.
And all the battle backgrounds, too.
Okay, so, and is it just you two on this project, or is there more people?
Well, we do work with the composer.
Yeah. I was going to ask about the music, because the music is bomb. The music is dope. So what is going on with that?
I found a composer online. He goes by Act Esper, and that's what he wants to go by, because that's how you find him. And he has worked with me directly for almost a year on all of these tracks. If you ask him, he'd be like, oh, I don't do much, I just do the music. But if you ask me, I'm like, he does the music.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely on that level. He has some really just banging SNES stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the music is tight. I mean, the music in the trailer sounds amazing. So I can't even imagine. How many tracks do you think you have at this point?
We have over 40 or 50, I think.
Wow, that's a soundtrack. Bring it.
Every dungeon boss has their own individual theme. The super boss has its individual theme.
Super boss?
Oh, yeah, there's a super boss.
You gotta have a super boss, Ethan. Come on.
I know, but...
Yeah, she's going to be great. You're going to love it. I've actually been writing that cutscene recently for meeting the super boss.
Very nice.
The super boss has her own individual theme. Kazik, the moody genius. One little teaser I like to give people right now is after you complete 2 dungeons, you're going to go back and he's going to be like, okay, you want to fight? Let's fight then. And you get to fight a wizard who's better than you in all respects. But one thing that I really want to do for this fight that's really important. If you win or lose, it doesn't matter. If you win, you might get an achievement and an item. If you lose, it's fine. But if you go and you overlevel and you use Overcast and you use a 4-orb spell, he's going to be like, you're trying to kill me. And he's going to change the fight completely. And it's going to be a way more difficult fight.
Nice.
Because so whenever I was a kid and I played JRPGs, I would go do things like go get level 99 in the first area and then go play the game because I'm like, I want to see what happens if I'm level 99, and nothing happened. And I'm like, that's not going to be in this game. If you go grind out in Mage's Forest, you're going to find a bunch of new interactions all over this world.
That's one of the things I really love about the story that Zach's writing, because every kid has that moment in Pokemon where they catch a legendary bird in red and then they try and show it to one of the NPCs, and the NPC's like, what? They don't even acknowledge that you have legendary Pokemon in your team. And he's like, no, in our game they would acknowledge that. And I'm like, yes.
When you're done with it, you guys watch The Completionist on YouTube? You've got to
have,
send
yeah.
it to the completionist because he's all about completion bonuses. And if you tell him there's a completion bonus, I almost guarantee he'll review it. And he's got millions of subscribers.
Oh, yeah, for
A
sure.
completion bonus is insane. Like to say that if we get to this point and you actually do it, then the game takes on a new life and everyone can pat you on the back, basically, or whatever version of that you're having. That's bomb.
Another thing we're actually kind of interested in is we really like the speedrunning community. And we really like RPG speedruns. So we've contemplated, like, as we get further along in Talif, like being the one of the communities we really want to foster is, like, you know, different types of speedruns for the game.
And so what are you thinking? Having different perks for a certain hour amount and completion amount?
Yes, that's one good idea. We consider making a boss rush to where you can just go straight through all the bosses and try
Oh, those are always so much fun.
I also really like you beat the game and you get new game mode and there's like a new thing you can go find. And like, that's like kind of a lost art now, right? Like now all that stuff comes in DLC. Like even Resident Evil 2's remake, Resident Evil 2 was the best about you beating the game fast and getting fun things. And you can like buy all of the unlocks for $5. I love post-game unlocks, and I definitely want to foster like a new game plus category if people are interested in it, or just kind of see like what it is they're interested in. Do they want to do like single element runs? Do they want like no equipment runs? And speaking of, to foster that whole thing, if Talif takes his gloves off, he takes massive damage when he casts spells, but he does way more damage than he would without them.
Ooh.
Every time you cast a spell, it reduces the damage you take by a small amount until you have no gloves and you're just casting like normal.
Toughened up.
And I'm actually even going to reflect that in a sprite where his hands will turn soup gray because he's casting stuff like that. Because I really like the whole concept of like, what happens if I take my gloves off? Does he just keep casting magic? And he sure does. But you'll take like 99% of your health for one cast. And then 98, and then 97, and if you cast like 150 times or whatever, you won't take any more damage.
Oh, well, that's cool. So there's going to be little things in the game like that, little surprises everywhere, as Willy Wonka would say. Nothing to be afraid of. I was going to ask, I did see in the trailer that made me think of Earthbound was there was Talif, and then there were characters following him. Are those characters just along for the journey, or are they in the battles also? Do they have attributes? What's going on with that?
There has been a lot of recent discussion about how this is going to work.
Sounds like heated discussion with that tone.
It wasn't heated. Tera and I never get heated. It's Tera gently pushing me in the pool to cool me off because I'm going too far.
I kind of watch him, and he's like walking towards the cliff, and I'm like, well, maybe he has a parachute. Maybe there's like a paraglider or something, and I let him do it because games can change, right?
Right.
Like they can evolve, and sometimes when they evolve, it's not necessarily a bad thing if they like morph from something they were to something they like knew. You know, I'm like, he'll figure it out. Go on, keep going. But then if he shows hesitation, it like aligns with like my thoughts. That's when I'm like, okay. Let me put something on the table. That's a cliff, and I haven't seen your parachute.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. What are the rules here? Like, is it just a co-production, or what are y'all?
We have talked about this a lot, and I'm like, it's really difficult to like encapsulate. I'm like, I don't want to like point by point out what we do, and I want to make sure everybody gets at like the full credit. So we kind of just say like, I make it with her, and we just kind of make it.
Right.
Yeah.
We were talking about if we do ever manage to make a video game company, I would be CEO and she would also be CEO.
Done. That's the way to do it.
Sure.
What do you feel like really sets this game apart for y'all? What do you think is going to make this different? I already can tell the battle system's the big thing, the story you want to tell, but what is the thing that you want to bring that's new to the JRPG?
I'll say 1, the battle system. 2, the story elements Talif's going to explore, I think is going to be really unique. I think that there's going to be some really unique things that happen that I can't talk anymore about. But I think there's going to be some really unique things going on in the world. And I really think that the world's going to feel more alive than probably most of the JRPGs. I'm confident to say that I think Talif's Journey is going to change enough over the course of the game with the people you talk to and the interactions you're having. It's pretty lively. Like there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I can tell that from the trailer alone. I was like, this is a world that feels like it's got character.
It's breathing.
And a lot of character.
The last thing I'm going to say is it's going to be free.
Wait, whoa, what?
Huh?
FREE? Is that what you're saying?
Those words. Cost
Okay.
$0.00.
Is there a reason it's going to be FREE?
Yeah, there is a reason. So the reason I like the most is that Talif in its heart and soul is a prologue. It is my introduction to you of this game in this world, because I'm not stopping here, right? Like, this is just the first. I'm starting here. So what I want to do is kind of in a good faith way, I want people to get interested in this world, and as many people as possible. I want no one left out whenever I release this game. I want everyone who has an interest to play it. And I would rather people not have to sit there and wait for like Steam sales or whatever. I would rather everyone just get to jump in and play it the second it lands.
And what are you thinking that's going to be?
January is my current shot. It was fall, but so many things have changed, and I didn't have a parachute this time, and I was trying to go to the cliff, and explain to me gently that these environments and tile sets are not going to be done. They're not able to be done because pixel art takes a really serious amount of time. I have the tendency to get ahead of myself. But yeah, so January is when I actually want to come out. I want to land free. So not only is Talif going to come out, but what I also want to come out with it are 2 story pack DLCs that will have a price tag that are completely outside of the story. Things surrounding the story, and like if you just want some extra lore and to see some extra story, or you just want to support like what we're doing, that's going to be for sale. Also like the soundtrack, maybe some art packs and things like that. But the core of Talif, everything in the game, completely and totally free for the entire main story.
And y'all aren't Patreon, nothing like that right now? You're not doing any of that? You're just working on this in your free time, is that correct?
Not yet. So I actually had the luxury of going full-time with this recently.
You win the lottery, bro? How did you go? But you had the luxury of going full time with this, so you're putting all your.
As of right now, I'm on it all day, every day, and I am going to start streaming the development.
Yeah.
Dude, you totally should.
Yes.
You totally should.
As 2 people who wanted to speak to y'all, because Ethan is making a game right now. He's developing a game. If you look behind him, you'll see
nowhere near as far along as you guys.
No, but he's got the concept, and he has the enthusiasm like you do, Zach. And I have enthusiasm too, but I'm the Tera in this situation.
Yeah,
where I walk in, and he is
definitely my Tera.
Yeah, but not as much. Like I need to be more like you, Tera, where I need to be like, pull it back, Ethan. But not always, because I think that spark and that creativity and seeing somebody so passionate about something is wonderful to watch, and you always want to foster it in the best way possible. Because
dude, it's infectious.
What he's talking about.
I'm feeding off your energy the whole time, dude. Like I want to play.
Like I said, there are cliffs that he's walked off of with a parachute. You know what I mean? Like he had an idea and he stuck the landing, and I was like, whatever I think, he nailed it, so it doesn't matter. I just keep an eye out.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you're there to do it, because it sounds like y'all are heading towards the finish line on this. Just talking to you both right now, I can hear the success. Does that make sense? Like I hear success just being spoken to me.
Yeah.
So what was the cliff that Zach was trying to jump off that you were like, no?
So Zach almost put party members, like permanent party members, in the game. Now, for the last 2 years, the whole game had been designed around the concept of it being the one character. And so I think we came to a really happy medium that actually, like, it was one of those things where, like, we stepped back. What we talked about is, like, okay, we really love the idea of, like, a cast, but we still have this, like, single RPG, like, core. And I'll let him say, like, how we kind of came to that, what we came to.
I was designing party members. I had the whole system designed out. Like, I had this big whiteboard, and I drew everything out, and I was like, this full battle system looks great, but Talif is the worst character in the game. And I was like, and Talif cannot be the least interesting character in his own game. He can't.
Yeah.
What actually stuck is I started getting this like feeling. I was like, I feel like Tal's getting overshadowed. And I kind of talked to Tera about it. And what happened was Consider was a weak ability, but Consider is a core tenet of the game too. So Consider is like how Talif restores his magic points. He's supposed to think about things. And Consider was getting relegated to like Scan in Final Fantasy, which I don't know about you, but I never used Scan.
Never.
And I always wanted it to be good. I'm like, Scan can be good, but it needs some work. Once Consider was going that way and Consider was going out and Talif was getting overshadowed, I was like, Talif's losing his identity to all these other characters.
Right.
I feel like that's happening. That's when Tera was like, he is. And it's not bad if you want to have a party RPG, but this isn't supposed to be a party RPG. It's not made to be. The story's not made to be. Nothing reflects that it is. And I was like, you are so right. So what her suggestion was that each of the party members, every dungeon had like what we called a mascot, who's an NPC for the dungeon story. And
that's awesome.
That's a good way to do it.
Each of the characters, and that was originally the plan, there's going to be mascot stories and you wouldn't help them in these dungeons. So instead, they're going to be guest characters that tag along with Talif within the confines of the dungeon, and they help him there. So then we kind of focus on their stories and focus on their mechanics for that dungeon, and then focus on things that way. So it's like you kind of go in, you meet your buddy, y'all go on a little thing, he helps you, you help him. Talif is the star of the show, and you say your goodbye and you leave. And that's how each dungeon is going to be, where you get to like really participate in their stories, but Talif is still like the guy.
I know it's kind of a weird thing to compare it to, but that almost reminds me of like in the Kingdom Hearts series, you go to whatever Disney World and they join you for that specific adventure.
I didn't even think about
that.
Works
that's
really
on
well.
That's the first thing I went to, but also the game that Ethan's developing, we had a similar concept. That's why we love it, because we have characters that are going to follow you in specific parts of the game. We love that idea of having characters that you can have their story interact with the main character's story, and it just bolsters it up. And especially because, like I said, I already know the story for this is going to be bomb. Like, it's going to be crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So you pulled back, you got it back on track, and you're focusing on this singular story with smaller stories outside, and then hopefully in the future bring in the party. Is that right?
So there's one extension that came out of this. Is when you complete a dungeon, you can go back, and there's a wizard in the tower who will tag along with you for a post-dungeon quest. So then you can see how the other wizards behave and interact with things and kind of like spend time with Talif's family, right? Because that's kind of like his family.
Right.
And the cast was also overshadowing the wizards. That can't happen at all. So then you get to do things like go with Silka and go see how she makes golems, or go with Grandpa on his quest to find Olguis, which are these little owl penguin monsters that he loves. Or go with Kazakh to investigate the mysteries of the Mage's Forest. And there's going to be like a couple of things like that. So every dungeon you complete, you also get an extra story with one of the NPC casts. And when you complete those, they will award you with a gesture based on their personal element. And that gesture will empower Talif to cast like better spells of that element too. And
sounds like a lot, but it's so good, because what it says to me, at least, this is a story I want to play, and this is a story I want to be involved with. All right, guys, we need to talk about the socials. You got Twitter and Facebook, okay?
I do.
You have your own blog. Everything's going to be linked below. Once the Twitch streams come up, we will put you down there, too.
Go watch him on Twitch. Whenever he figures out the stream, I'll be sitting in that chat probably.
Sure.
You're going full-time. You're shooting for January of next year. And also, free. Free. People, come on. Play this game.
No reason not to experience the journey, man.
And if you need help playtesting, just send it our way. We'll be happy to try out the game.
That's something that I will actually do. Like, I need as many testers as I can get.
Yes, absolutely.
We got you, dude.
We got you, and our buddy Will play it too. Will will know what's up. So
shoot, dude. Once you get that stream going, we're there.
Yeah, we'll watch.
Awesome.
We'll watch. Y'all have been great. Hopefully, we can have you back on another podcast. We'll talk about some games or something like that. I wish y'all the best of luck. Hopefully, we'll talk to you both again soon.
I'm so glad to get to sit down and talk with y'all about all this. It's so cool, man.
And seriously, Tera, you're killing it. I'm holding up the card again. You're killing it. Like, this artwork is insane. Y'all are gonna make it big. I can tell already. Y'all are gonna kill
For
this.
sure.
So this enthusiasm, I'm enthusiastic. But other than that, thank you so much for listening. This has been Duck, and I have been here with
Dr. E.
and Zach and Tera. And y'all, I hate to do this to you, but I gotta let you know something though.
It's very important.
We appreciate you being here. This is the tagline, by the way. I gotta let you guys know this. I'm sorry again. We appreciate everything, but you ain't Billy Mitchell, bitch. So stop trying. Just stop. Are you?
I would never try to be Billy Mitchell.
Did you get to meet him? Did you get to meet him?
I did. I mean, but I also am hyper aware of Billy Mitchell anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's because he's hiding under your bed, and he's going to get you with his tentacle-like mullet, dude. I'm not even joking.
Oh, no.
And there it is. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have enjoyed it, please do not forget, share with your friends. That is how we grow the network. And if this is your first time listening, head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, and give We Are Podcast a like. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, you're going to love the other podcast here on the We Are Podcast Network. We have We Are Error, where we talk about movies, entertainment, whatever the fuck we want to talk about. That's me, that's Jake, that's Hobby. We're breaking down pop culture, and we're having a blast. Don't forget Heroes Gyros, a Dungeons and Distraction side quest. Me and the boys were sitting down, we're playing some D&D, we're having so much fun. You can go ahead and start that from the beginning of the journey, Season 1, Episode 1. You're going to love it all the way through. And finally, I Hate Being Sober. Personal stories from epic people. I'm going to sit down with some of the most epic people I've ever met in this world, and we're going to talk about their life, we're going to talk about their trials and tribulations, and we're just going to talk about their journey this far. Head on over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. You can find us at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at /WeArePodcast. Also, head over to the Facebook group, We Are Era. We would love to see you in that group. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, share it with your friends. That's the only way we can grow this network. But with that said, I have to remind you, I can never let you forget this. You ain't Billy Mitchell, bitch. So stop trying. We'll see you next time.